Good evening, and welcome to Evening Focus. I'm Pastor Michael Miller, your host here tonight, and it's Holy Week. Well, we started with a wonderful celebration on Sunday. The entire parking lot was filled for our 8:15 service. I heard there were 245 people present. It was great to be gathered into one place. Even though we were all in our cars, it was good to be able to see each other and to wave to each other and to be able to share together in worship. So if you were there, thank you for being there. And if you didn't make it last Sunday, we'll have two opportunities outside on Easter Sunday at 8:15 and 10:15. But we have a long ways to go yet before we get to Easter. Holy Week is about journeying with Jesus through suffering and through death into life. On Monday in Holy Week, the gospel story takes place again in Bethany. You may remember that was where Lazarus and Martha and Mary lived. Well, Jesus goes back to Bethany within a week of the Passover, within a week of his entry into Jerusalem. And they have a banquet for him. And you can imagine why. Lazarus has been raised from the dead. It must be an extraordinary celebration to welcome Jesus back into their home. And while they're at that meal, at that banquet, Mary brings a jar full of really expensive perfume. And she pours it out on Jesus' feet, and she wipes off his feet with her hair. It's a profoundly self-giving act of love for her friend, the one who raised her brother from the dead. And one can imagine, if you just imagine your brother or your sister or another family member who's been raised from the dead, literally, what kind of love would pour out from you to the person who called that person back to life. But while Mary is pouring herself out to Jesus, one of his disciples, Judas, begins complaining because why she should have sold that and given the money to the poor. But the gospel writer John also whispers in our ear that he really wasn't so concerned about the poor because he was the treasurer for the group and he took money out of the purse for himself. We see in Judas in that moment the kind of complexity that is part of our own human nature. Maybe he had a concern for the poor, but he also had a concern for himself. And his complaint about Mary, I think, reveals the brokenness that's there. We tend to complain and to blame in fear and anger when there's some kind of unresolved hurt, some kind of untransformed suffering in our lives. Jesus speaks to Judas and says to him that he should leave her alone, because Jesus sees this not only as an act of selfless outpouring of Mary's love, but it's also preparation for his death. She's anointed him in preparation for his burial. In John's Gospel, Jesus knows a lot. He's able to read people, and he anticipates what is about to happen. Jesus has a kind of knowledge that no one else in the story has. And he knows what's coming. He knows what lies ahead of him. And this act of love on the part of his friend Mary is something that he treasures. She's precious to him. It's a good story to hear at the beginning of this week because it carries all of that complexity, the complexity of our own experience, how sometimes we act out of fear and hurt and anger. Sometimes we act out of great love. most of the time that mixture of emotions and feelings and motivations is a part not only of our human community, but part of our personal selves. So as we journey with Jesus through this week, it's good to be seeing that and to be reflecting on what it is we struggle with. Jesus says that he came not to be served, but to serve. And he's showing us, as he continues to journey toward the cross, just how far he's willing to go with that. We see another example tonight in Mary, and you can think of many examples of people who have shown that kind of love in your own life. And I bet you can remember times when you gave yourself freely and willingly. But most of the time it's a mixture. And Jesus is calling us out of that to see clearly what service looks like and what love looks like. So if you have a prayer space like the one we created here at home, that's a place where you can go and just sit and reflect on what that looks like and feels like in your own life. The tensions, the complex set of motives that you experience. I posted on Facebook what my prayer space looks like in my apartment as we share in a Holy Week celebration through this season at home. And I invited anyone else who has a photo that they could share of their space, so that would help us to imagine other possibilities and to learn from each other as we pray at home and as we listen to the depth of this story through Holy Week. So, as we move to the next step, we're going to gather our prayers for today, keeping in mind the love that we see in Jesus and in Mary. Here's my letter. All right. Well, part of the suffering that we're experiencing in this time, of course, is the COVID-19 disease. We heard today that the British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, went into ICU. So nobody's immune. Everybody's vulnerable to this, from people at the top of politics and business to people in poverty, and that's another great concern. Cities like New Orleans and Detroit, where people don't have the resources to protect themselves, or Native Americans on reservations where people are living together in close quarters and don't have any place to move away in order to create the distance that would protect them. So people in poverty are in great vulnerability, but even people who have wealth and power remain vulnerable to this disease. And so today we pray for all of them, that God would protect them and that they would find the care that they need, whether that's at home or in the hospital. We pray again for the healthcare workers, that they would be protected, cared for, that their needs would be met and sustained during this time, that they would continue to have the energy to give in compassion. I heard a news story today interviewing the head of a company that makes surgical masks, and to again speak about complexity. He talked about past epidemic when they scaled up, bought a new factory, hired 150 workers to be able to produce many masks, and as soon as the epidemic was past, people went back to buying those masks from other countries, and he almost went bankrupt at that point. So the economic systems don't always support what we best need, even when people are willing. So we pray for those who are working hard now to provide the protective gear, the medications, the ventilators, all that's needed to care for people who are ill. But we also pray for those larger systems, that they would shift and move so that they support compassion and support the people who are working so hard right now to bring an end to this pandemic. We pray for farmers who are already going back into their fields or will be shortly. We pray for those who've had to dump their produce because they're not getting to market or they're not being purchased at this point because of the changes in the way that we're getting out to the stores and the way that we're buying things. We pray for everybody who's suffering economic hardship right now because of the disruptions. And we offer our prayers and supplications with thanksgiving, and so I conclude with a thanksgiving. The loan closet here at First Lutheran Church still has medical gear available. People drop it off and donate it when they're done with it, and then those who need it can stop by to pick something up. And so someone offers thanks today for a shower chair that they were able to pick up here. So we thank you for generosity, our generosity to one another, and the ways that we creatively find to share with one another and to be of service, just as Christ showed us through his service to us. Gracious God, bless us all as we continue the journey through Holy Week, that we might see more clearly the mind and the Spirit of Christ, that we might share it. In his name we pray. Amen.
Battery? Want me to go plug it on?
Technology.
Yeah.
Now the battery just fell out. And you can't turn the TV on without it.
This is true.
There we go. So, we're trying to take really good care of each other right now, so instead of coming in today, Mandy is going to Skype in with us so that she can share her stories, and we're going to talk a little bit about how she's been doing.
Hello, friends.
Hello, Mandy.
Hey, Mandy.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
So you're at home right now, right?
I am. I'm coming to you from my living room.
All right. And I understand you've been working at home these last couple weeks. So tell us how things have changed for you during this time. We've heard you read stories, but we haven't just sat down and talked.
It's true. I'm there telling stories all the time, which is great. But one of the things that's very odd is not being at church all the time, because I tend to be there quite a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the biggest things. I don't get to see all of my friends all the time, so it gets kind of lonely here, because it's really just me here.
Mm-hmm.
But I am working at home. They figured out how to let us work on a very, very secure network. So all the information is locked away and nobody can get into my internet connection so that I can work at home. But I can't call clients, which is hard. They ordered us some cell phones, so hopefully soon.
So tell us what you do.
I adjudicate claims for the Social Security Administration for disability. So when people lose their jobs or can't work anymore because they hurt themselves or they get sick and they're going to be permanently sick, then I look at all their medical records and see if they qualify under all of these rules to see if we can give them monthly payments so that they can have an income while they can't work.
Mm-hmm. And so things are kind of held up and delayed right now because you can't actually meet with them and talk through those things.
Yeah, I can't call them and we can't send them to our doctors because all of our doctors right now are concentrating on the rest of our health crisis right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be very frustrating for people, and it's frustrating for us too.
Yeah, there's so many things that have ripple effects. One of the changes, it's the people who are getting ill that are the immediate concern, but that changes everything as we stay distant from each other and as various businesses have been closed or at least partially slowed down.
Yes, and our office was pretty high risk. We have about 200 people in 10-foot by 10-foot cubicles on one floor, and it's all open air. So it was concerning, so they tried to send as many of us home as they could to work at home.
And how's that working?
Unfortunately, I'm more productive at home because I have sunlight in my workspace now, and I have a special friend here who entertains me on my breaks. You'll meet him in a little bit.
To meet in a little while. Okay, good. Yeah. So what have you? Well, you've enjoyed the sunlight for sure. Anything else that you particularly enjoyed about being able to be at home?
I've been cooking a lot more. I cook a lot. Yes. And I have an Instagram where I feature all my food. Lately I've been cooking low carb, which has been an adventure. Yeah, Ben there dropped off some veggies for me today, which was very nice. He got me some lovely root vegetables, which I'm excited to make.
Good. So there's some upsides to being at home.
There are.
What about Holy Week now? Now that's going to be a different thing for everybody. That's one of the things that's been impacted by all of this. What do you anticipate for Holy Week at home?
Well, it's going to be kind of hard. Holy Week tends to be a week where the choir is very, very involved. We usually would have rehearsal Wednesday night to get ready for both Good Friday and Easter. And obviously, we're not. So instead, I will probably be here at home on Good Friday and sing from afar with some of our songs and say prayers here. And Easter, I plan on going to my mom's. Sorry, our special guest is making an early debut.
Hello!
So I'm going to make breakfast with my mom. We're going to watch the live stream on Easter morning. We're going to make some fancy food, some Eggs Benedict, and have our Easter brunch there.
Sounds terrific.
And probably sew more masks for family and friends.
So you've been sewing masks?
We have been, yeah. She has been. I pick out the fabric.
All right, good team effort then.
Yes.
Well, good. Well, God bless you in that Holy Week journey, and I understand that you have a story for us now.
I do. I have two stories tonight, but I'm going to tell the first one before I formally introduce our guest, who is growling in the background.
Yes.
I had to switch what I had to entice him, so he's very excited for what else I got out to entice him over here. So my first story is about Mary and baby Jesus. And it's kind of a legend, but it's one of my favorite stories. So as this story goes, when the baby Jesus was lying in the manger, he began to shiver from the cold. So Mary draped blankets over the infant, but he continued to shiver. She spoke softly. "I don't know what to do. I thought you were hungry, so I fed you. I thought you were wet, so I changed you. I thought you were cold, so I wrapped another blanket around you." She asked the animals in the stable to move closer so that their body heat would warm Jesus, but the child continued to shiver and cry. She rocked the infant and then laid him back in the manger filled with hay, but he continued to cry. A little tabby cat who witnessed the scene knew what needed to be done. He leaped into the tent to purr. It was the sweetest lullaby imaginable. The baby stopped crying and drifted off to sleep. In her gratitude to the cat, Mary gave the cat a kiss on his forehead and marked her own initial, so that tabby cats would forever remind the world of how one of their kind had comforted the newborn Jesus.
Aw,
That's a great story.
Great.
So that leads me to introduce our special guest, and let's see if I can entice him with some sticky tuna.
Uh-huh.
Come here, baby. Come here, little boy. What is that? What's Mama got? Oh, come here. There we go. So you can see he's got a little M on his forehead.
Yeah.
So is Mary. We're going to let him eat some tuna so that he'll be real happy.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah. Tuna with gravy is one of his favorites.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure he really wants that tuna. Can you come say hi? Can you say hi? Come here. You're being silly.
So what is his name?
Here we go. This is Hamilton, although his actual name is much longer.
Uh-huh.
It is, and I wrote it down so you can see my pun. Yeah, I know you're mad. I put you down. Here we go. It is Alexander Hamilton the Cat.
Ah, very nice.
Yes, very, very funny. Oh, and he's here because he really wants more tuna.
Uh-huh. Hello, Hamilton.
Wait,
Hi, Hamilton.
you say hello?
Hi, kitty. Oh.
He's a very, very snuggly boy, and he loves to play. And his favorite foods are tuna and pizza and ranch dressing and peanut butter.
Ooh.
That's a very balanced diet.
Yeah.
It is.
That sounds
It
like one
is.
of my
It's
own.
impressive, right? Probably sprinklings of catnip, particularly from the catnip banana.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of his favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Can I put you down? I'm going to read a story about another wonderful pet. About a little turtle who would like a pet. Can you say bye? No, too busy. Too busy eating.
Goodbye, Hamilton.
Oh, I put the food on the book. That's not good. All right, so I have a story. And this story is about a turtle. A turtle who wants a pet. Franklin wants a pet. Franklin could count by twos and tie his shoes. He could sleep alone in his small dark shell. He even had a best friend named Bear. But Franklin wanted something else. He wanted a pet. He's got a little stuffed dog right now.
Mm-hmm.
Franklin had wanted a pet since he was small. But whenever he asked, "May I have a pet, please?" his parents would say, "Maybe someday." Franklin waited for a long time. He often pretended to have a pet. He took Sam, his stuffed dog, for walks. He taught Sam tricks. He even helped Sam bury some bones. But Sam wasn't a real pet. One day, Franklin asked his parents again, "May I have a pet, please?" Franklin's parents looked at each other. "We'll think about it," they answered. At first, Franklin was happy because they didn't say no. Then Franklin became worried his parents could think about things for days and days.
Yeah.
That day, Franklin visited Bear, and Bear told him about the pet he wanted. "If I had a pet, it would be a bird," said Bear. "Why?" asked Franklin. Because birds sing beautiful songs, said Bear. Birds are nice, said Franklin, but their loud singing may wake me too early. Franklin waited until morning before asking his parents if they had finished thinking yet. Not quite, said Franklin's mother. We need to know that you could care for a pet. Franklin nodded his head up and down. Could you feed your pet? Asked Franklin's father. Franklin nodded again. He almost said please 100 times in a row, but he stopped himself. Franklin visited Beaver and told her all about the pet he wanted. If I had a pet, it would be a cat, said Beaver. Why? Asked Franklin. Because cats make purring sounds, she answered. Cats are nice, said Franklin, but you never know where they are. I know where Hanson's at. He's eating.
You just need peanut.
Later that day, Franklin asked his parents, Are you finished thinking? Not yet, they answered. Please hurry, said Franklin. His father sighed. Franklin, this is a big decision. A pet costs money to buy and to keep. Franklin offered all the money in his piggy bank and hoped it would be enough. After counting his pennies, Franklin visited with Goose, and Goose told her all about the pet he wanted. If I had a pet, it would be a bunny, said Goose. Why? Asked Franklin. Because bunnies have wiggly whiskers. Bunnies are nice, said Franklin, but I think whiskers might make me sneeze. After 3 whole days, Franklin was tired of waiting for his parents to finish thinking. He had a plan. He brought Sam to the breakfast table. I have been taking care of Sam for a long, long time, he said. I will take good care of a real pet, too. I will feed it. I will clean its house. We can take it to the vet if it gets sick. Franklin's parents smiled. It sounds as if you've been doing a lot of thinking, too, they said. So, may I have a pet, please? He begged. They whispered to each other. Then they nodded their heads up and down. Oh, thank you, said Franklin. He wanted to go to the pet store right away. We'll help you choose a puppy tomorrow, said his father. No, thank you, said Franklin. I do not want a dog. His parents were surprised. Dogs are nice, said Franklin, but I want a quiet pet. Franklin's mother asked if he wanted a kitten. No, thank you, said Franklin. Kittens are nice, but I want a pet that stays close by. Is it a hamster that you want? Said Franklin's father. Franklin shook his head. No, thank you. A rabbit? Said Franklin's mother. No, thank you. What kind of pet do you want? Asked his parents. Franklin smiled and said, I'll show you tomorrow. At the pet store, Franklin pointed to a fish. I want a goldfish, he said. A goldfish? They said. Why? A fish can't do tricks or play with you. So Franklin explained. He liked to watch fish swim slowly around and around. He liked their beautiful colors, and he liked the way they made him feel inside, quiet and calm. Besides, he said, I love goldfish. That's the best reason of all, said Franklin's parents. Franklin named his fish Goldie. He took very good care of her, just as he'd promised. Every morning, Franklin watched Goldie swim around and around, and every night before he went to bed, Franklin blew a great big fish kiss and whispered, "I love you, Goldie."
That's a great story. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Mandy.
You're welcome. It is a good story. It's nice to have a pet around, especially when we're needing some comfort right now.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Mm-hmm. Well, take good care of Hamilton. And thank you
I
for
will.
introducing him to us.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, I think we may sing a song about a pet. Or
A pet? Oh,
about
some animals maybe?
anyway. Yeah. So stay tuned and have a great Holy Week. And we look forward
I
to
will.
running to
You
see
as
you
well.
then. Bye, Mandy. Goodbye, Mandy.
Bye.
So, do we have a song about animals?
We sure
We do. Good evening, everybody, and thank you, Mandy, for sharing that story and introducing us to your pet. This is my pet. This is Chloe. She's got the M on her forehead, too.
Cute.
Yep. So pets can be such a blessing. They bring us comfort and companionship. And God teaches us to care for all of creation and to take care of them always and to love them tenderly. So we have one song tonight we're going to sing that talks about caring for animals and our pets. So that's our last song this evening, folks. We're going to turn it over to Pastor Michael for our closing.
As as we think about Jesus' service to the people around him, to his friends and to those who are in need, I'm thinking tonight about our second harvest food distribution, which will be happening this Thursday. And we're going to need some volunteers who can consistently lift for 2 hours. Because of the distancing requirements right now, all of the food has been pre-packaged and boxed, and volunteers will be needed at a setup with a 2-lane drive-through. And so each person who comes will receive 4 to 5 boxes of food, so we're going to need volunteers who can lift up those boxes and put that in people's cars as they come through, entering on the Milwaukee Street side of the church and exiting on Memorial Drive. So everybody who comes in their vehicle will stay in their vehicle, and the volunteers will simply put the food in the trunk. So if you're able to do that, you can call the church office, and we'd be grateful for volunteer help. All right, as we conclude tonight, I think about Franklin's goldfish and how it helped him to be quiet and calm as he watched. And our chant helps to do the same thing, to focus us in, to center us down, to pay attention to what we're called to pay attention to during this Holy Week. So sing once again with me. Changeless and calm, deep mystery, evermore deeply rooted in thee. Changeless and calm, deep mystery, evermore deeply rooted in thee. Changeless and calm, deep mystery, evermore deeply rooted in thee. May you rest well tonight, and may the Spirit guide you on this journey through Holy Week to a place of deeper awareness and deeper understanding of the love that holds you and the love that guides you into new life.